we started last week explaining that there's a ketem, the dinim of ketem. Ketem means you see a stain without a hargasha, without a feeling, without a sensation. You didn't feel that the dam came out, which is one of the hargashot we spoke about last week. And ketem would be that you just saw a stain. Now, in ketem we said there's a certain amount of conditions in order to make the woman tameh. When a woman comes to do bdika inside, we said that that would make her tameh. Doesn't make a difference how much she saw on the bdika cloth, because she has a sensation at the time she puts it in, and therefore we don't know, she doesn't know, she might get mixed up with the feeling that she had putting the bdika cloth inside, and maybe there was ptichat piarechem, and that's the real feeling that she had. So therefore, when we come to the dinim of bdika, we have, as we spoke last week, 3 different levels of cleanness of the bdika cloth that would determine if she's tameh or not. There's beged that's considered baduk, beged that's considered lo baduk, not checked, one that is checked, one that is not checked, or as the Rama calls it, ed benoni, beged benoni, which means something in the middle stage, and then the third stage, and that is beged meluchlach, something that's not clean, it's dirty. What's the difference between them? Beged baduk means the bdika cloth, she looks at it beforehand and she checks, and therefore you don't have to use dafka those bdika cloths that they sell, but you can take, let's say, a t-shirt and check with that t-shirt. If a woman is stuck in a place where she doesn't have bdika cloth, so she can use other things that are soft. If the cotton, like a t-shirt or something like that, that's preferable. And in order to do the bdika, that should be counted as a bdika, she should look at it, make sure that it's clean. That's called beged baduk. Anything that you'll find on it will be considered tameh, will be metameh the lady. Even the smallest dot in there will be metameh the lady. Now, what's the color? That you have to show a rabbi that understands colors to tell you if that's the color that should be metameh. Many of the colors are really not metameh the lady because it's only a discharge, or it's only after, while a woman stains red, after a while it changes color, and that color is not always tameh, it's not always bad. Also before she starts the period, she sees different kind of colors, and those colors not always are tameh, so you have to show it to somebody that really understands. But if the color is a color that's tameh, and therefore you can determine that this is definitely dam, she becomes tameh on the smallest spot that you find in there. Then you have the beged benoni, ed benoni, beged that's considered lo baduk, it's not checked, which means something that is clean. Let's say she washed the clothing, she put it in the closet, and now she checks with such a thing. This is something that's considered lo baduk. She didn't check it specifically, she didn't look at it, she didn't observe it. But still, it's not something that is dirty. So therefore, over here you'll have different dinim. This din for this would be that up to a gris, if she finds a shiur of a gris, she is tahor. More than a gris ve'od, she is tameh. Last week we explained that the shiur of kegris is a shiur of a lice, kina, ma'acholet, because at their time there would be kinim, ma'acholet all over. It would be very, like I explained, it's like a third world country it was. And therefore, kinim were very, very found all over. So they would constantly found stains of kina. The stain of kina back then would be a size of about almost a penny. So if a woman finds a shiur of a penny, this is the shiur that Moshe finds and says, and this is how most of the poskim hold, that there's a machloket. Up to what size we can go up to. There's a Sefer Me'il Tzedakah that has a larger shiur than that. But the halacha, like a penny would be metameh, a penny. Less than a penny is tahor. So therefore over here, if a woman has such a beged, but she never checked it, she puts it in the closet, and now she checks with it, this is considered beged lo baduk, not a checked cloth, and it would be tahor up to that shiur. More than that shiur, she'll be tameh, because we can't be toleh anymore in a kina. And then you have beged meluklach, a cloth that was taken, or any kind of thing that was taken from a place that is dirty, that you have over there dirty things. Such a thing, it will always be tahor, even if she finds a stain on it. We're saying that the stain was there beforehand, and therefore you don't have to worry about this whatsoever. This is the difference between the shiurim that we found on different levels of beged, bgadim, and their cleanness. Then you have...
If it's a safek deoraita, why is it beged?
Right, so last week you asked such a question, and we explained that it's really not, according to most poskim, that's how Hamavadia says, most poskim hold that it's not a safek deoraita, which is, most of the poskim would say that if a woman does a bedika, we consider this really a safek derabanan, not deoraita. We metameh her miderabanan. And even if it would be a deoraita, even according to those that hold it's deoraita, it's only when you have a proof or you have a real safek. But when you have something that you took out from a place that is dirty, you have something lying around on the floor, something lying around on your basket of the laundry, things that are not clean, so such a thing would not, doesn't go into a safek even. So we mekel in such a thing. Now, we explained the size of the stain, and the size of the stain, you need to know the size, whether it's on a ketem, which means on the underwear, on the sheet, right? Now when we're talking about a sheet that became stained, it's only at the time that a woman doesn't wear underwear. If she wears underwear and the underwear is clean and the stain is not, so you can tell that it's not from her. How could the underwear stay clean? But if she does, if she doesn't wear underwears, so then it could go on the sheets, it could go on the clothing, and she could become tameh with some conditions, as we explained. One of the conditions on the stain, on the ketem, is that she has to find it on white, not on color. So therefore, let's say she wears a color underwear, or she doesn't wear underwear, but the stain goes on the sheets, and the sheets are colored, so she is not tameh. Why not? Rashi says it's hard to tell the color on the colored sheets. You can't tell easily that it's dam, and therefore we hold halacha that she's tahor. That's with an exception to off-white. You have something that's off-white, also we consider that as white. Yes?
Colored sheets with white spots.
So if you find on the white spots, you need to find over there a shiur of, like we're explaining over here. The shiur of a keten is a shiur of a penny, kegris ve'od. So if you find it on white spots, yes, she will become tameh. If you have that enough of a shiur only on the white, not on the white, the color doesn't combine to it. That's how we posek halacha lema'aseh. We even mokel more than that, although that in the halacha there's Chamudei Daniel that brings that like that, but la'alacha, the minhag poskim is to be mekel even if you find on two spots that are white, and there's let's say in the between there's a line of different color that goes through and separates them. So you could say that you can combine the two. You have half a grease here, half a grease here, and you have a line that's separating them, but you can see that it's all combined because the stain goes through and through from one to another. La halacha, we say that you separate the two. So when you're dealing with the size of a kegris ve'od, which is the size of a penny, it doesn't have to be in a round shape. It could be any shape. It could be stretched very long, right, to the length like this. You still, if you can put this together into a size of a penny, she will become tameh. So that is something to pay attention to. How do you measure those things? Put the penny under the cloth. You see that the penny is pretty big, as we explained last week. You'd be surprised how big it is when you put it against the stain. You put it under and you show. That will give you an idea how big the stain is compared to that penny. Now, where can you find the stain and be metameh the woman? It doesn't have to be on the cloth. It could be on anything that's mekabel tuma. So there are many things that are not mekabel tuma. We explained last week. It could be the if she sits on the floor, if she sits on the toilet is not mekabel tuma, and so on and so forth. We spoke last week about finding a stain on the body. When you find a stain on the body, it's more strict than finding it on the clothing. On the clothing, if she found few stains, that if you combine them together, she'll have a shiur of kegris ve'od, you'll be metaher, because it's on the clothing. So we're saying that each one is a different kina. That's what it is, and therefore you metaher. But we're talking about on the body, the poskim, the Shulchan Aruch is machmir, the Rambam is machmir, and that's how we posek, that even though they are separated, but if you can combine them to that shiur of a penny, she'll be tameh. Why is that? Because the body is clean from ma'acholet. Usually people don't have lice on their body, and if they do, they would remove it because you feel uncomfortable. Unlike the clothing, that was much more common. Now again, just to remind what we said last week, although today there's no kinim at all, almost nobody has kinim, and therefore that the halacha was so strict about or lenient in this aspect should not apply today. The Chatam Sofer says that once Chazal were kovea those dinim with those measurements, those shiurim, they come to our time as well, because this is the way it stayed forever. Those are the halachot. It doesn't change in time.
There's been a tremendous change in the standards of people from the time of the Chatam Sofer until now.
Right, but he doesn't tell us the difference between then and now. It just says that you should know that the halachot that Chazal established, they don't change in time, although the facts, in our case, for instance, is not anymore kinim, or they're not so common. It doesn't change, because once Chazal were kovea shiurim, although the time that Chazal were kovea the shiurim were nikva because of the lice, but that doesn't change within time. It doesn't change up to the end of time. These were the shiurim that Chazal gave, and this is the way it stays.
So to broaden the scope of my question, can a rabbi today write off a stain on a woman in America, or on any that might have been emitted by a woman on her beged or anywhere else, due to a kinim?
So,
because what woman is walking around with lice on her?
That's exactly what we're saying. We're saying that today the halacha does not change, and a rabbi has to follow, and everybody have to follow the law according to the way the Torah and the way Chazal told us. And you can't take today's different conditions that we have and say that the halacha have changed. The halacha was a shiur of a stain is a shiur of a penny of kegris ve'od. That's the way it stays. Although today you don't have kinim, or kinim are much smaller, so you should be machmir on that. The halacha is the way Chazal established it. That's the way it stays, and it doesn't change.
It's pashut like this. It's not even a chidush, because they never made it asur. They invented the isur to be.
So that's the way the Chatam Sofer says. Another way to learn is no. Chazal established that it's a shiur of a kina, and therefore today that kina could be much smaller. That's one way to learn. And secondly, we can say that Chazal, we do find, for instance, yes, over there you also have in shiurim of kazayit v'kabetza was shiurim nishtanu. The Niddah Yehuda says that all the shiurim were changed and they doubled the size almost. So you see over there we go, many poskim go and with this more strict shiurim. Mishnah Berurah says that when we're dealing with Siman Taf Pei Vav, he says over there in Ilchot Pesach that whenever you have a din deoraita, you'll go with the more strict shiurim. Mishnah Berurah is posek like that. Whenever we're dealing with shiurim derabanan, you could be lenient with the shiur that's smaller. Chacham Ovadia has tshuvot over it over and over again to say that shiurim were not changed. But you see, if they would be changed, you would say that it goes according to a different shiur. Over here also, you could say that since the kinah doesn't exist, maybe Chazal would kovea the shiur only when there are kinim. And we do find such things that some places the restrictions that Chazal made us have changed. And you don't have to apply them. Like for instance, I'll give you an example where the Gemara says that Maim shenitgalu, or Mashkim shenitgalu, you have liquid that was left exposed, uncovered. It becomes asur if you don't observe it, you don't look at it. You go away for a couple of minutes. The time that a snake could come out of his hole and put his poison inside, it becomes asur. What's the reason for this? What I just said right now. Because a snake might put his poison inside. So this halacha is in Shulchan Aruch. But it says the Shulchan Aruch that today en nechashim metzuim benenu. We don't have snake, and therefore the whole isur is uplifted. Achronim mekubalim like the Shla and Rizal say that the isur is not the isur. This is the tam hanigle for the isur. But there's also hidden tamim that still apply over here, and one is not allowed to be lenient with mashkim shenitgalu. But you see over here that the Shulchan Aruch says that this halacha doesn't apply anymore today. So there are some times you would say such a thing. There's a mefaresh on the side of the Shulchan Aruch, one of the Nosei Kelim, Matei Yonatan. He explains when you say that you can uplift the isur and when not. When do you say that af al pi shebatel hatam lo batel adin, or you say af al pi shebatel hatam batel adin? When do you say each one? There's different lengthy discussion over it. But this is the tzad to say that today those lies don't apply. Maybe we should be strict on any shiur of a stain. And the halacha says the Chatam Sofer that we don't go like that. This is how the poskim hold. Now we explained last week, we're summarizing more in detail. We said also last week that whenever a woman checks and she sees a stain, and it's 100% dam, not always you would say she's tameh, because many times it's possible that a woman gets irritated, she gets yeast infection, urine tract infection, all kind of different cuts inside because the place is very sensitive, and therefore you need to know that indeed she is tameh because the dam came out from the makor, from the womb, from the rechem. But if it came from a different source, as we're explaining right now, she has some kind of sensitive cut in there, so therefore that would take out blood. You can see that many times by the look of the stain. It looks very different than dam that came out from the rechem, because the dam that came out from the rechem usually comes before she checks, and once she checks, it has a stain. A woman doesn't know that, but I'm telling you that this is something that a woman would know when she comes. Well, if it's a veset, it's a veset. But we're talking about a woman that doesn't have right now a veset, because otherwise it would flow. She doesn't do bdika. When does a woman do bdika? Either before, when she does for a veset, right, for yom veset, or she does to be metaher herself for the Shiva Nikim. So right now she doesn't have a period, but rather she finds a stain in there. Normally, if it's a spread out stain, that usually comes out from inside. It was there, and now when she checks, it goes all over the cloth. But when it's a makah, which means she has some kind of cut, so that cut usually doesn't bring out blood unless you press on it. When she puts the cloth on it, she presses on it, so then the stain will come out on the cloth, and it will come out very different, because it would come out much smaller. It would be more concentrated. It doesn't spread out. It's much more concentrated, and it would be a small stain usually, very small. So you would see something very strange. The whole cloth is very clean, and you have a very small dot inside that is very, very red. That's some kind of indication. Obviously, you can't decide upon that whether she's tameh or tahor. You have to show it to somebody that understands. And even then, he would go and try to further understand and investigate whether it was painful or not at the time she did the bdika, or other times she was with the husband, let's say. And if he can't, if the rabbi can't determine for sure with pretty much clear understanding that it comes from a makah, so he'll refer her to a bodeket. What's a bodeket? That's a very important thing to know. Bodeket are ladies that check the woman inside to see what's going on. And they make an internal check and see if she has a stain, if she has a cut, if she has a cut, if she has a sensitive, the place is very sensitive, the place is rough, the place, it could be that the dam comes out from a different source than rather from the rechem. They'll be able to see inside, and if they found that it could be a different source for the blood coming out, will be metaher the lady. Chazak uvaru.